Coach Tony.
Okay, folks, we are back, and we're taking a bunch of your emails here. Again, I know you guys are traveling this week, but we still do have the phone lines open at 914-693-5700. But I will get back to some of your emails because some of you had some pretty interesting things to say. In fact, C. McLaughlin writes in and says, "Hey, Coach Tony, if I were in the same situation, I would have avoided answering the press and told my family to do likewise, waiting for the groundswell of outraged support to happen for at least another full-course tryout. If failing to impress the coach after that, I would, quote, get on with my life's work, as Chuck Knoll would say." Now, first of all, let me finish. Maybe try golf or bowling. Nah, just bowling. Golf carts for the disabled piss off your competitors. Well, C. McLaughlin, again, I thought you were going to start out with some value. Instead, you know what? You're being a jerk. Let's not turn this into something it's not. And by the way, anybody who acts like a jerk and quotes Chuck Knoll, don't ever call the show. I will not take your call. I don't think Chuck Knoll would have responded that way to this current situation. So the reality of the situation is this. Should they have talked to the press? I got to tell you, I agree with you on that one. And I don't think this kid has to get on with his life work. Like I said, you're being a jerk. Golf or bowling, knock it off. The kid's going to play JV for a year. If you throw 80, you can do well at the JV level. You can throw in the 70s and do well at the JV level. I personally, and let's not confuse this, I hope this kid rocks. I hope this kid kills it on the JV level and he plays varsity next year and signs a pro contract, because that's a great story. I'm not hoping that I'm not, dumping on a great story. I hope this is a great story. I unfortunately believe that a lot of these folks in this community in Orlando are trying to make a great story when there's just not one there. This kid deserves all the credit. Anthony Burruto, and I did reach out to Anthony last night to try to get him on the show, and I was unsuccessful to do it. If you're listening, guy, I hope you kill it. I hope you continue to do what you're doing. You have my absolute support. You have my absolute respect, and I'm in your corner. I hope this works out great for you. But, let's just face it. You might just not be ready for varsity, kid. Most of the sophomores who are playing high school baseball aren't ready for varsity. You want to be treated like everybody else? I think you are. So you just got to deal with it. So, you know what? But before we get back to emails, I do want to get to some of your calls. And Frank, in fact, we're going to go to Frank, who is calling in from Long Island. Hey, Frank, you're on Let Them Play.
Hey, Coach Tony, how are you?
I'm great, man. What's going on?
Not much.
What's the matter? You can't afford a vacation?
Great story, but how long before we have parents complaining that my son was discriminated because he couldn't hit curveballs in high school? My son was discriminated because he couldn't hit a 90-mile-an-hour fastball. My son wasn't fast enough. It's a great story, and like you said, this kid has definitely a place to play baseball. I mean, if you can't play, you can't play. It's simple as that. I wish him all the luck in the world. But
yeah, nobody's saying he can't play. I thank you for recognizing this, because I'm basically pulling out the sledgehammer to make this point. This kid is going to play JV. If he was even close to a bubble kid as a sophomore on the varsity, he's going to be a stud on the JV. He'll have a chance to pitch. I mean, nobody really cares about you in high school until your junior or senior year anyway. So this kid's gotten more recognition from this little stunt than he would have gotten for any of his pitching prowess. I mean, that's a fact. But going back to what you said, my kid's fat, my kid's slow, my kid stinks, so let's only put him up against a pitching machine. This all falls into what we've been calling in my business the, quote, wussification of youth sports in America. And it is a fact. There are parents out there with elitist attitudes and this whole sense of entitlement who just can't accept the fact that, guess what? Your kid is just not that good. And does it suck to tell a kid with 2 amputated legs that you're just not that good? I don't want to tell any kid you're not that good. I mean, I'm not breaking out the crying rag for the coach, but he had to look a kid in the eyes who has accomplished an awful lot in his life and basically tell him, here is your first, let's call it significant drawback. Your first significant dose of reality, the first splash of cold water in your face, because guess what? This is high school, and we're not going to put a no bunting rule in place, which they've done for him.
Coach, Coach, I'm just saying, how would this coach look the other kids in the eye that he had to cut to keep this kid on the team, to say, I know you were probably better than, I think his name was, what was his name, Anthony?
Yes.
I know you're probably better than Anthony, but this is a better story. It's going to make me not look so bad. Maybe you could play next year on varsity.
Hey, you want to talk about people grabbing their torches and their pitchforks? What if it was your kid who deserved a spot on that team and got cut because, hey, we'd love to have ESPN Magazine come down and do a story because we got a kid with 2 prosthetic legs pitching for the team. It's not fair. I hate to say it, if this coach did something that was not above board, I'll dedicate an entire show to people who want to call in and throw stones and crucify this guy. But until that happens, he was given a tryout. That's the only right that you have in high school sports. You have the right to try. You have the right to participate in the form of a tryout. You don't have the right to make a team. And again, you know, I don't know this kid. I've not spoken to the kid, and I don't know enough about the story. But if on one side of his face he and his parents are saying, stop treating my son different just because he has 2 prosthetic legs, treat him like everybody else, and then he was cut, how do you cut my kid? He has 2 prosthetic legs. He's not like everybody else. You can't have it both ways, and that's really what kind of sets me off. And I'm not going ballistic on this because I don't have that as the facts, but I think it's a great call. So, Frank, I thank you for the call. Always great to talk to you, and I think Frank kind of nailed it. You know, you don't change the sport. You don't change the system for the kid. You change, and what these parents have apparently done a very good job so far of is you change your kid to suit the system. You know, there is no league for kids with prosthetic legs. Actually, that's not true. It's not true. The Miracle League, who I've actually supported in the past, does a great job of, you know, bringing baseball to kids who have disabilities. And you should check out the Miracle League, and you should donate your money and your time if you love baseball. It's a great thing to do. But my point is, there are no dedicated high school teams. Let's put it that way. Who have kids that have prosthetic legs. So you either say, I'm going to quit, or I'm going to do my best. And Burruto, dude, listen, you're doing your best. Don't be the guy to turn this into something it's not. Don't turn this into boo-hoo, baseball's over. You do that, and I'll be the one crucifying you next week on the show. You better play JV this year, you better kill it, and you better shove it down these guys' throats, because that's the only way you're going to solve this one, period. All right, I am starting to get a little worked up, but I want to get back to some of these emails. Brett wrote in and said, hey, Coach Tony, what a rotten position for both the kid and the coach. Why not take a look at the governing body for high school sports and ask that they make conditional exceptions for children with disabilities? After all, the schools do it all the time in academic aspects. Accordingly, Anthony could get his shot without taking the roster spot of another higher ability athlete. However, all coverage of Burruto makes it seem that he's on par with the other children's skill set, if not better. And I'm going to stop you there, because I don't know if all you're reading is the blog comments from parents, then they're saying he's on par with the other kids, if not better. No one has written that he's on par or better. If he was on par or better, again, this would be expose city, and people would be down there ready to hang this guy, the coach. Now I'll go back to the email. In essence, it's hard to believe you cut a power pitcher for a slower pitcher that can better field a bunt. Again, you're assuming that that's what they're doing. Hopefully the slower pitcher can keep the team in close games where a bunt would be necessary. It actually seems that the coach is worried that other teams would embrace a relentless bunt-to-win strategy against this kid rather than simply bunting when the situation calls for it. If that happened, I would hope the opposing team received a ton of media scrutiny for their lack of sportsmanship. Well, you're assuming a whole bunch in here, Brett, including that the media really cares about anything. This story will just go away. It's a story because the kid got cut. There's not going to be any exposés on, South Florida bunted 17 times against. No, it's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And by the way, your idea of making conditional exceptions for children with disabilities, you know what? I'm going to drop my first Mongo of the day. That's a Mongo statement. Because then what concessions are there going to be? You can't put the no bunt rule in place. When does this kid, let's assume he is not as good, and you want him on the team just because he has 2 prosthetic legs. When does he pitch? When does he pitch? When does he bat? Do you put blindfolds on the people in the field? What are you talking about? And comparing this to making concessions for kids with learning disabilities, if that's what you're alluding to, guess what? You got a learning disability. Because you're really comparing, like I said, it's not apples and oranges, it's apples and cinder blocks. That's my favorite one to use. You're trying to drag two things into this scenario, Brett, that don't belong anywhere on the same page. So, listen, your sympathy and your empathy is compelling, but you know what? Do me a favor. Stay out of sports. That's just a stupid comment. Knock it off, all right? I think I can get another one in here before we got to go to break. This one comes in from T-Rav. I like the nickname, but T-Rav writes and says, "Hey, Coach Tony, as someone who's coached high school athletics, this issue is fairly simple. Did the coach make clear the expectations for making the team ahead of time? Were all the athletes asked to field bunts at tryouts? Did Burruto perform poorly compared to those who made the team? If the answer to those questions is yes, then Burruto had a fair tryout, and there should be no problem with him not making the team. However, if the criteria was not made clear ahead of time, or fielding bunts was not part of the tryouts, or if not all the athletes had to do it, then you have a problem. You have a coach that is cutting an athlete simply because of a perceived lack of ability rather than something that was fairly evaluated. So it really comes down to what actually happened at the tryout and why the kid was really cut. If you are a disabled athlete who wants to play a sport that able-bodied athletes play, it is your job to meet the same standards that others meet. At the same time, it's the coach's job to fairly evaluate all the athletes at tryouts, holding them all to those standards. I always made sure my athletes knew how they were going to be evaluated at tryouts ahead of time, and all the athletes underwent the same tryout procedure. And I never had a single problem with people complaining about who was cut. Just be fair. No kid wants to make the team because of his or her disability. They want to make it because of their ability. You know what? Take a bow there, T-Rav. Great nickname, great email. Now, I will tell you, you pat yourself on the shoulder a little here too much. You've never had a problem? Great. I don't see anything in this email that said you ever had a kid with 2 prosthetic legs come and try out for your team who was a decent player either. So don't dismiss that so quickly. But your ideas are right on, spot on, guy. You're talking about just how was this tryout handled? If the kid was given a fair tryout, and by the way, nothing that has been printed, published, or put on YouTube or on any of these other networks really has anything even remotely resembling evidence that this kid was not treated fairly. So, you know what? I think it's an unfortunate situation where a kid, they talk about his dreams of getting bashed. No, his dreams were put in perspective for a year. Come on, guy, get over it. Get over it. All right, you know what? We do have to go to a break, but before we do, you know what, guys? There is a great new technology that is available. You're going to love it. It is called Rapid Response SMS. This is some very slick technology. Basically, it allows you to provide, for your small business or even your large business, it allows you to provide text-based coupons, discounts, what have you, direct to consumers who opt into your program. I like the technology so much that I actually started using it myself. In fact, if you want to start keeping track of the show and the topics that we covered, pay attention. Just text LTP for Let Them Play. Text LTP to 71441. I'm going to say that again. Text LTP to 71441. And this way, direct to your phone, you'll get a jump start on the topics for the week, and you're even going to get a coupon for a 10% discount on my book that's called Kids in Sports, a tactical guide for parents and coaches. That's Rapid Response SMS, and again, you're going to love this new technology, and starting next week, you're going to start hearing them sponsoring the show as well. This is great stuff. But we do have to go to break. Stick around, folks. We'll be right back.